Hi, welcome to Pro Shop Talk. My name is Daniel and I'm the Technical Director here at RW Supply & Design. Today we're going to be talking about sealers and kind of some of the confusion around sealers. And I'm going to be talking specifically with Micah Loberg, who is a rep for Loba Wakol and was a contractor for a lot of years. So welcome, Micah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think I just want to talk about sealers, like flooring sealers, which is another product on the shelf, different from a flooring finish. But I think there's a lot of confusion around how is a sealer different from a flooring finish? When should I use it? What does it actually do? Is it an additional thing to the flooring system, or does it take the place of other things? And even just the term sealer is confusing because like finishes seal, stain seals. So like, you know, what's the difference between a sealer and something else that's sealing the wood? So just briefly, how would you explain what a sealer is and how that's different from other things like finish and stain?
This is going to be within the system for our coating system, so it's going to be different than a stain, and not even a brand related, stain by any means. But the difference between a stain and an actually finished sealer is going to be the bond promoter when it comes to what you're stacking on top of it. Okay. Whether it's a stain, down, or raw wood.
Your sealer, your floor sealer, what's the name of it?
Easy Prime.
Easy Prime, okay. Where does that go in the finish system on a floor?
It's going to be the first thing that you put on before you put your finish on top of. So you can put your stain down first, so the stain wouldn't be considered a finish or a sealer by my definition.
Yeah.
But it's sealing the pores and filling up the pores. Then on top of that, you have to have a foundation that your finish goes on top of.
Between the stain and the finish?
Correct.
Okay. So,
or the raw wood and the...
Or the raw wood and the finish.
Yep.
Okay, so a sealer fits between either the raw wood or the stained wood and the finish.
Exactly.
How is it different from a finish? Like, so a lot of people are gonna apply a floor finish to the raw wood or to the stained wood. How's the sealer gonna act different from a, quote unquote floor finish?
Think of it like priming paint on your wall. You're always going to put a primer, which is not only like a build, but a bond promoter. Okay. And so that's the easiest way I can explain it, because everyone's painted their bedroom or whatever. So it's a bond promoter between the stain and the finish, or a bond promoter between the raw wood and the finish. It's also, which we're going to get into later, it's a cheap insurance for the long-term wear and tear of your floor.
Gotcha. And so when you say a build coat, does a sealer or your Easy Prime, does it build more than finish would as that first coat?
It's a good question. I think the mill layer is going to be very equal to the build. A lot of primers and sealers out there have a thinner viscosity than Easy Prime. Easy Prime, I'd say our number one complaint is how thick it is. They're just not used to putting down a sealer that feels like finish. And so once you put it down, you're not only having that bond promotion, but you're also having a build that hopefully, if you're around that 500 square feet a gallon, you're more than likely over that grain raise before you even start with your second coat or your first coat of actual finish.
Gotcha.
So at that point, your build coats become your protective layer, and you're not worried about grain raise as much.
In terms of number of coats, like what would you recommend somebody use on a floor? Is it 2-coat system good, like Easy Prime, 1 coat of finish, or do you want a 3-coat system, Easy Prime, 2 coats of finish?
I'm a 3-coat guy. I think overall, the majority of the contractors are more successful with 3 coats. You're just going to get above that grain raise. With 2 coats, if you're pulling with the T-bar, it's really hard to put enough finish on the floor. So we're really trying to be in that 500 square feet a gallon kind of range. And if I'm on a job site, I'm like more finish, more finish, more finish. So we get above that grain raise. So I'm always going to be a 3-coat system, depending on what you sold it on. But over stain might be a different story because you already have that wood grain, closed up. So more likelihood to be able to be above that grain raise quicker. But to me, better success with the majority of the contractors in the world with a 3-coat system.
Gotcha. So you want a 3-coat system. And you mentioned stains, so that brings up another question for me is like a lot of guys are going to say stain is a sealer. Put stain down, you don't need Easy Prime or any other type of sealer on top, like we're good to just start putting finish on. So you already addressed the fact that Easy Prime or sealers are bond promoters, right, between the stain and the finish. Is that Easy Prime on top of the stain also going to be needed, or does the stain act like a sealer itself?
I'm always gonna push Easy Prime no matter what for your first. So depending on what the contractor is building into their job site and all that stuff comes into play to a degree. But if you stain the floor, which the floor you're sealing the wood pores, you're filling up the grain of the floor, the pores of the wood with the pigments, and that's the color of the floor. But it's not helping you with bond to your next finish. And then it's also it's not only a bond promoter, but it eliminates or deters the white lining that can possibly have long-term shrinking and expansion. And so a sealer is going to help with that bond as well, to let the finish go ahead and break and separate in a healthy manner instead of stretching and becoming weaker.
Gotcha. Okay, so that's a good intro into the next question I had, which is what problems does a sealer prevent? So you talked about white lining. And probably a lot of guys have seen that, perhaps some haven't, but that's just where between every board you're getting white lines. And that's happening, as best as I understand it, because the finish is stretching. It's like stretching a piece of plastic, turns white, and it's not breaking. So you're saying a sealer underneath the finish will allow the finish to break instead of white line.
Exactly.
Okay.
Those are the two main reasons why you're going to use a sealer or or primer, is to allow that finish and that entire system to do what it's supposed to do. And in our climate, we have so much shrinking and expansion out here. And so it's really, really valuable to use your sealers. And everybody that knows me knows that I'm going to be absolutely pushing that no matter what. I don't care if you do 2 coats on top of stain or not. I'm always going to still push for you to go ahead and put that as a cheap insurance, is how I'll explain it. And when you're on a 3,000 footer and you stain that floor, even if it's stain neutral, you're more likely to have a long-term issue without a sealer.
Gotcha.
And it's hard to put a number to exactly, but your long-term wear and tear is going to play a huge factor into whether you used a sealer versus not.
What other issues besides white lining do sealers protect against?
Bond issues. Say you polished your floor up and it's just a raw wood. It's more likely going to open that grain back up and let you bond to the pores of the wood.
Gotcha.
If you just put finish on top without having that little bit of flexibility and rigidness, not only the flexibility that comes along with the finish, but the rigidness of the sealer, so that it actually breaks.
Gotcha. What about if you're going down on raw wood and you're coating on raw wood? Are there issues that sealers will help prevent in terms of pouring finish on raw wood?
It's going to just always go back to the white line. That's going to be the reason why you don't have a white line. And you're also going to be, I'll just keep saying, bond promotion and white lining or panelization.
What about tannin pull, stuff like that?
Absolutely. And thanks for bringing that up, because it's Easy Prime on especially white oak. It can be really dangerous with tannin burns. And with Easy Prime having that tannin blocker, natural tannin blockers in it, you literally could roll it any which way. You could pour it on the floor and get away with it, unlike if you were to just do it with, like, say, Easy Finish or Duo or something like that without the Easy Prime. So
if you're pouring a finish directly on a floor, you could potentially see burn marks, which are tannin pull and stuff in the floor. If you're putting Easy Prime down, you're not going to have those burn marks. So if you're going to raw wood, a sealer is going to prevent, potential applicator marks and stuff in the wood. Okay.
Absolutely.
So you guys have one, quote unquote sealer, which is Easy Prime. But you also have finishes that are self-sealing. So what does that mean? What is a self-sealing finish?
It's within the system. We have a couple other finishes. One being invisible. To be able to stay within that raw finish look, it has to be self-sealing. And so that's just a different solvent that's in there that's going to help it self-seal and get the same benefits. It still has tannin reduction qualities in it as well. It's also going to seal the floor and be a bond promoter as well between the two. And then between the 3 coats. And then we also have hybrid, which is self-sealing in a 2-coat system. And that's because it's an oil modified finish, so it has oil modifications in it. And so it's not necessary for that to have a sealer before it, because it's within its own system. And then our price point finish, Life, is also self-sealing, and that goes the same. Gotcha. It's a standalone finish in its own system.
And all those self-sealing finishes are just finishes that are easier to apply to the raw product, but they also have all the other benefits you talked about earlier in terms of helping to prevent white lining and things like that.
Yep, correct.
Okay. How would a floor look different if you, just from like the build look, would there be any difference between a sealer finish and a finish?
The look's going to be about the same. Okay. The build's going to be the same. With Easy Prime, it has such a thicker viscosity than the normal sealers that everybody's used to. The build's going to end up being about the same, and that's why I tell people, if you're going to do 3 coats, that first coat you're just hoping that you get above the grain raise at that point. Yeah. So why not use that insurance? Because if you call me and there's a problem with peeling or something like that, something crazy that happens, the first question I'm going to ask is, did you use Easy Prime?
Gotcha.
And if you say no, I'm going to go, why didn't you use Easy Prime? It not only saves you money, but it's like that insurance that you get that everyone's like, how do I make this, a qualified floor? And it's like Easy Prime, Easy Finish, Duo, or whatever you decide to do for your system. Yeah. So the build's not going to be any different. Okay. And so there's absolutely no reason, unless you're in the middle of nowhere and don't have sealer, you'll probably get away with it. But on that 9 times out of 10, the one time that goes wrong is like on a 5,000 footer. Yeah. And me and every other, rep for any other company is going to ask you, did you use our complete system?
Gotcha. So. It's a little counterintuitive to hear a finish rep tell you to buy a cheaper product for the first coat.
Right.
But for guys that are doing a 3-coat system, you can save money and have a better product by throwing in Easy Prime as first coat.
And that's how much I believe in it.
Yeah.
I'm like, there's just absolutely no reason. There's no money involved on my side that makes sense to have somebody do it a different way.
It's just the better product.
It's the most successful way to qualify your floor.
Gotcha. As opposed to other finish companies, you guys only have the one, strict sealer, but that sealer can be used in a couple different ways. So can you tell us how you can color that and use that in different ways?
So instead of having 3 or 4 different gallon jugs with 3 or 4 different names on them, we have additives for it. So you can either use our whitener or our amberizer in the first coat, or add that also to your next coats as well to determine what depth of brightness they want or amber that they want. And so to me, it makes it a little easier. You can have a case of Easy Prime in your van and a few units of our additives in your van, and kind of, as you're talking to the homeowner, you can go, oh, okay, you wanted a little bit more amber. How about this? I do, 1-to-1 on this next coat and bring that tone back up again or something like that. So to me, as a contractor, it's, coming from the contractor background, I think it's easier to have the additives than to actually have 3 different cases of 3 different primers, gotcha. Beginning colors or tones. So between the just natural version and our whitener and our amberizer, you have endless tones that you can start that floor with.
Now, your additives come in small bottles that go 1 to a gallon.
Exactly.
Do you ever do 2 whiteners to a gallon or half a whitener to a gallon?
Yeah.
Or does that get tricky at that point?
I'm quickly going to be off the record, So there's plenty of people that are doing 2, but I think it's easier to do 2 coats with a coat of each 1-to-1 than it is to do adding 2 of our additives to 1 gallon. Then it's, it becomes a more pigmented finish, and obviously makes the game a little bit tougher. Like your stop marks are going to be easier to see. And
at that point, it's almost like tint coating. You got to be really even with
it's
your coat.
It's A game. Yeah, it's A game. So, you know, if you're putting enough finish on the floor and giving it its time to flow out, then you're probably going to get away with it. But I'm always going to say, you know, if I'm talking to the average guy that I don't know, I'm going to just say, hey, just stick to the one. And then if you need more, add it to the second coat as well.
Gotcha.
It's easier for you to pull off and me to, you know, sleep better at night too.
Would you ever do 2 coats of sealer, like 2 coats of Easy Prime?
There wouldn't be any reason.
Okay.
There wouldn't be any reason. Unless you had to like walk away from the job or something like that for a couple of days, but it's not going to do anything. Not going to do any benefits for you.
How quickly should you put that coat of finish on Easy Prime?
Within 24 hours.
Within 24. And do you have to buff it at all?
Nope.
Just hot coat?
No, if you put a buffer on it, it's going to get all gummy and, you know, it's not a finish.
So in your finish system, you're going to say Easy Prime, first coat of finish, then you buff before your final coat.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Easy Prime, hot coat your second coat on top within the 24 hours, then go back and abrade and final coat.
Yep. Is there ever an instance where a guy is going to put a sealer over a coat of finish?
It would be an accident. It wouldn't be. It would be. Yeah, there'd be no reason to do that. Yeah, it would be an accident.
So a guy may do it, but there's no reason to do it.
Yeah, and it's not going to be. It's happened, so it's also not going to be a failure. And then you just throw finish back on top of it because it's all going to bond to itself.
Yeah.
Being that it is a bond promoter, it's going to bond regardless.
Gotcha.
But it would just feel tacky the whole time. You wouldn't.
Gotcha.
You wouldn't be getting a check for that job.
Are there any instances where a contractor should not use a sealer, should not use Easy Prime?
No instance.
No instance that you can think
Unless you're using one of our self-sealing products.
of? Yeah.
So, yeah, there would be
And
no
at that
instance.
point, it's optional. You could still use the Easy Prime.
Correct.
But you don't have to with a self-sealing finish.
Yep.
Okay. So the question, contractors are great at messing things up, myself included, and finding creative ways to do so.
Yep.
So if somebody's going to screw up a sealer, what are the most common ways guys are going to screw up a sealer, and what are the most common pitfalls to avoid?
Hard to talk on with Easy Prime because you cannot mess up Easy Prime. No one has messed up Easy Prime, short of putting a pigment in, you know, an additive in it, and then because you're dealing with a pigmented finish, so you could have a stop mark or something like that that might show up with a pigment. But Easy Prime on its own, you cannot mess it up. And even if you were to miss a spot and leave that missed spot and went back over it with like Easy Finish or Duo, you're still not going to see that missed spot. The tones are exactly the same. So Easy Prime's one of those where I purposely do a bunch of messed up stuff to the floor when, you know, I pour it on or leave a roll mark and just leave it there and then go back over it. You cannot mess up Easy Prime, and, you know, I hope someone takes that challenge and tries to mess it up. But short of, like I said, short of the pigment added to it and having a stop mark or a lap line or something like that, you can't mess up Easy Prime.
Let's say you do leave a heavy mark or something in the Easy Prime. Should you try and hand sand that out or just coat over it?
If it's like 3-dimensional, you know, if you can feel a puddle or something like that, grab your scraper and break that puddle. But it's as simple as that. That's if I walked in and saw a big puddle, you're always going to have your scraper probably in your back pocket regardless.
Yeah.
So just hit it really quick, vacuum it all up, and while you're vacuuming, you can hit those, or in a corner or something like that puddle up. Yeah. But you don't have to over worry about it. Gotcha. If you do see something, you might see like sheen differences and stuff like that throughout, and that's really common, and that's all just micro 3-dimensional height differences are going to show shinier if it's heavier. But 9 times out of 10, you just start coating it, and that all goes away.
Gotcha. So unless you're dealing with something real extreme like a big puddle that you can scrape down a little bit, then you're just going to go in and coat over it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And you can use all your finishes over Easy Prime?
Yep.
Every one of them?
Yep.
Awesome.
Yep.
Okay. Well, great. Well, thanks for helping clear that up.
Yeah, buddy.
And outlining how it works both within your system and also floors in general. So appreciate that.
Cool. No problem.
Thank you for joining us on Pro Shop Talk.
Sure.
I'm Daniel, and I'll be seeing you next time.